In today's episode of the Pathway Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Kelly Riedel, and she's heading over as a senior demand generation manager over at Rimsys. And basically, Rimsys is an very interesting solution in the compliance space. So basically, it's the only RM software designed to specifically focus at the medtech industry. So we're going to have a very specific use case here today. We're going to be talking about, and very curious to learn more from Kelly about Rimsys and how she's thinking about growth for the company. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, yeah. So maybe give people a quick overview. What is Rimsys all about in your own words?
Yeah, so we are a regulatory information software platform for medtech companies. We find that a lot of times regulatory affairs professionals working for these medtech companies, they have trouble getting visibility that they need into their regulatory workflows, including their medical device registration, submissions, and really getting that insight they need on changing regulations. So Rimsys really comes in to help provide that visibility. We're a holistic RIM platform designed to help them optimize their regulatory workflows and digitize them. So we really provide that centralized hub to give them that critical visibility they need into their products to help them make informed decisions and stay on top of ever-changing global regulations.
Very cool. That gives us a very clear overview what you guys are all about. Now, who would be sort of or what types of organization would benefit the most when we're talking about the medtech industry? Like, is there like a certain characteristics that you feel are important for them? Is there a certain scale, size? Is there maybe a certain amount of output they would have to do? Like, what makes a great fit, essentially?
Really, it's a medical device manufacturer who's really looking to optimize their regulatory processes. So these are usually manufacturers with at least some products on the market. They might be struggling with digitizing their products, optimizing their regulatory workflow. So that's where we come in to really help them digitize those products, make sure they have the visibility they need so they can strengthen compliance and then get their products on the market faster too.
Very clear. Now, who would you say within those organizations is sort of the champion? Like, who has that foresight to bring in the solution? Does it come from an operational angle, from a legal angle? Like, who's bringing it in?
It's usually regulatory affairs professionals, since they're so ingrained in the day-to-day management of these regulatory processes. So we find they're often our champions, but it could also be, an IT team too. We find those charged with digital transformation efforts are often tasked to look into regulatory information management software. So they can also be our champions and really help drive that process along.
Very cool. Now, how would you describe their journey, right? They're obviously in a very specific niche. They're, obviously in high demand and busy individuals. Like, how do they learn about Rimsys? Like, what's their journey looking like, or what are sort of the client acquisition channels you guys leverage?
Yeah, I mean, there are several channels that we leverage. One is organic search. We have a content team who does a really good job of making sure that our keywords are optimized. And so we have a lot of, and they do a really good job of putting out relevant content for our audience too, relating to specific regulatory challenges they're facing, for example, getting a 510K submitted. So really making sure that our content's optimized for keywords really helps. So we do have a lot of potential buyers find us organically. We also do a lot of paid search advertising through Google and Bing. So we have prospects find us there. We also do a lot of email marketing and email nurturing to really help move those prospects along in their journey. And we also, since the pandemic restrictions have lifted a little bit, we've returned to in-person events, which has been a really big driver of helping us increase our visibility as we're trying to expand our presence in the market. Really meeting people face-to-face has really helped us drive those conversations and help medical device manufacturers gain awareness of who we are and what we do.
Very cool. What role do you think then the website plays in that journey, right? Because in such specific markets, what we've seen is in the podcast is like the website can take a very different role from purely being informational to actually being a conversion driver. Like, how do you think about the page?
I think it has both. And I do believe that the website's very critical to our marketing efforts, especially with medical device manufacturers. Regulatory information management technology is relatively new for them. It's been in pharma longer, but it's really an emerging technology there. So we find that on the website, we have to be very clear about who we are and what we do. So just making sure that when those visitors who do hit our site know exactly that we're built for med tech companies. We really want to make sure that our content's optimized for SEO. And we also want to try to stand out a little bit too. We have our Rimsys purple. So to really help strengthen our brand and make sure that those who hit our site leave with a memorable impression. And we also try to optimize for conversions too. We really want to help build our value proposition. And one of those ways is to try to get prospects who hit our site to a demo. So we want to make sure that we have strong conversions too, to try to move them through that funnel and also provide them with any thought leadership content they need if they're not quite at that stage yet.
No, super interesting. I mean, that gives us sort of, an insight into how you're thinking about growth for the company. So maybe let's switch gears a little bit and talk about yourself as a marketer a little bit. Maybe could you give me an insight, right? With all the content out there, so many articles and blog posts and noise, like, where do you personally find high quality information to educate yourself further as a marketer?
Absolutely. So I rely on webinars a lot. I get a lot of webinar invites through my email, and I'm always trying to learn and grow because in marketing, technology changes all the time, best practices change all the time. And I think it's super important to really stay current on what's going on and trends in the industry so that we can help translate what we learn to our audience as well. So I find webinars to be really helpful. For example, HubSpot, they have a great series of webinars. I try to join them as much as I can and read their thought leadership articles too. They're very informative.
Very cool. Now, as we're slowly approaching the end of the interview, I would have some rapid fire questions to get to know you and your journey a little bit better. Are you ready for those?
I think so, sure.
Very cool. So what's the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Last book I read, it was Grit by Angela Duckworth, which I found to be very eye-opening and really helpful in terms of prioritizing my own personal goals and really having the tenacity to see them through.
What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
I think one thing that we're constantly focused on, and especially at that moment, is just to make sure that we're creating the best customer experience possible for our customer base by continuously listening to their feedback and then enhancing the product to their needs as well. And just making sure that the product evolves with the ever-changing global regulations that do too.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what's the one thing that you would fix for your role as a marketer today?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing that I think would be tremendously helpful if there were no boundaries is to have our whole entire tech stack seamlessly integrate with each other so that we can leverage those insights all in one place.
What is the last thing that kept you awake at night for your role as a marketer?
I think from an email marketing perspective, it's really just making sure that our emails stand out in a meaningful way, especially since the pandemic. Email volume is higher, and a lot of professionals are just receiving more in their inboxes on a day-to-day basis. So I really want to do all that I can to make sure that we stand out from all the noise that they may be getting and that we can help increase engagement along the way. It's getting a bit more challenging as more companies adopt email marketing and up their volume as well.
And if we would do a little bit of time travel and go back to the days of Chatham University, right? So you're heading out of formal education into the world of writing and marketing and growth. What's the one advice you would give yourself for your journey?
One piece of advice I would give myself is to speak up, because I come from more of a professional writing background. I started in marketing, super entry level, and I started out creating and cleaning email lists. I really didn't know a lot about email marketing or other facets of marketing, but I had that interest there, and particularly with Google Ads. And one day I just asked my boss if she could show me around the platform. I just wanted to get a feel for it and learn. And I wasn't sure how that conversation was going to go, but she was very receptive to it, and it really helped me get my foot in the door and learn something totally new. And it also helped me grow within the company as well. But it took me a few months to even get up the courage to ask, because being super new, I wasn't sure how well that would go. And I was a little doubtful about the value I could bring. And so just knowing to speak up can have rewards, and taking those risks is definitely something I would be cognizant of if I had to restart again.
It's very inspiring, I think, for a lot of like up and coming marketers that are maybe coming in from different arenas into the role. Although actually what we noticed here on the podcast is very strong marketers come from writing background, theater play writing background, because in the end, copywriting is just so important in the whole function. So very, very cool. Let's wrap it up for today. We're getting to the end of the interview. I want to give you the very last word. If people would be forgetting all that we discussed about Rimsys today, what's the one thing people should remember?
I think one thing people should remember about Rimsys is that we are built for and by regulatory affairs professionals. Our founders have backgrounds working at previous medical device companies. And so they know the challenges that regulatory affairs professionals experience on a day-to-day basis, such as missing a registration renewal or missing an expired product registration. And so Rimsys is built with those specific regulatory challenges in mind. And we really want to make sure that that translates to our customers. We want to help them remain compliant and keep their devices on the market. So just having that in mind, just having that experience personally, I think really helps drive the value of our product.
Very cool. Okay, I really appreciate you joining us today for the Pathmark Presents podcast, and thanks a lot for being a guest on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me, Lucas.